Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD, retired. My co host tonight is a 21-year veteran of the NYPD, also retired detective straight out of Brooklyn, Phil Grimaldi. How you doing tonight, Phil?
I'm doing pretty good, Billy. How about you?
Really good. You know, this case coming out of Virginia, serial killers are rare these days. And one of the reasons is because technologically they get caught early. They usually get caught much earlier because of course cell phone technology, because of video, because of the sciences that we're able to use to connect cases together. However, this case down in Virginia, it appears to be now that they have at least five bodies connected to this serial killer. And I just want to say right out front that I want to give our condolences to the family of these women, because sometimes we lose sight of that when we investigate these serial killings. Everyone is so interested. Oh my God, this is a serial killer. But there's real people behind this. There's real victims and there's real families. And I just want to get that out there right in the beginning, to let people know that there are real people and there are real victims to these murders. And we're going to go into it in a second. But you ready to go off the cuff? This is Police Off the Cuff.
I'm ready.
It's a show with two retired detectives that were in the thick of New York crime, fast and hectic. They got some stories and some jokes, even an interview with the most popular folks. Off the cuff, off the cuff. One episode just ain't enough. Get a little laughter and an interview too. It's maybe the best thing you can do.
Hello, folks. You know, this case first came to the attention of the police down in Virginia on November 23rd. And that's when they discovered the two bodies of Arlene Elizabeth Redmond, age 54, and Tanita Laurice Smith, age 39. And the commonality of this was that there was some dating apps being used by the suspect called the Fish dating app and Tagged dating app. So, and in addition, there was this hotel down in Virginia called the Moon Hotel. So they were able to right away, upon the discovery of these bodies, with videotape evidence and also digital evidence regarding phones and that type of stuff, arrest someone right away. And they arrested an Anthony Eugene Robinson, and he's 35 years old. So now this is unusual in itself that they can make an arrest that quickly. So what that allows the police to do is to what they describe as work backwards. Now we put him in prison, and now we get all kinds of time to work on the investigation. And as it turns out, and we're going to get into it later on, but there's at least 3 more bodies. But the work of the police is nowhere near finished. And in my whole police career, I don't think I worked on a serial killer. There was one serial killing case in East Harlem in 1997. And I had just gotten to the precinct. So I sort of watched it, and I didn't get really a chance to dig in and work it. But they're not that common. So when it happens, all jurisdictions, all police, all FBI, there's a lot to learn about it. There's a lot to learn about suspects and the victims upon working this case. Phil, you got anything to add?
Yeah, Billy, obviously serial killers are very fascinating to the general public. I'm glad that you got out right in front and offered condolences to the families of these 5 young ladies that were obviously killed by this serial killer. Again, condolences from myself to these family members. I mean, 5 families lost a loved one. That's, I think, gets a little bit lost when we dove into a serial killer type of case. I did have occasion to work on a couple of serial killer cases. Obviously, my partner arrested Joel Rifkin. That was a pretty well-renowned New York area serial killer. He killed, I believe, about 17 women. One of the, actually, two of the bodies wound up in Coney Island when I worked in that precinct. My partner caught those two cases. And, he was arrested by the state police on a car stop, and they uncovered this litany of bodies that were connected to him. And there was another case that I also worked on where a retired sergeant was killed. I talked about this case before. He was only retired about 2 months, but the guys that were responsible for his murder had killed about 5 people. Two murders were connected to the retired sergeant. And then they told us about other murders in confessions. So, there's a lot of fascinating things with this case. There was a speedy arrest when these first 2 victims were recovered in November. And I think there was video surveillance camera footage that showed the victim being dumped in a shopping cart. And the shopping cart was key to putting this serial killer case together. Of course, there was other bodies that were found with a shopping cart present, as well as the same thing that you mentioned, Billy, with the Moon Inn Hotel was frequented by the victims, and also there's plenty of fish and tagged dating apps. I'd really like to get into that when we talk about the dating apps, because I think there's going to wind up being a trail. We know of 5 bodies. There could be more. Maybe even some people that actually survived this Anthony Robinson's attacks. So I'm sure that between the Virginia police, Washington, D.C. police, and the FBI, there's an extensive investigation that's probably well on its way. And obviously, a lot of the things that we've talked about on other cases, video evidence, cell phone technology, that was really key in this case. And I'm sure that it's going to be able to, shine light on if there is other victims.
I want to play a very short video just to give our viewers a sort of a bird's eye view of what we're dealing with here. And we'll get it from the news down there. Get this on the screen.
That man, Anthony Robinson, killed at least 4 women in Virginia and used shopping carts to move their bodies. Our John Henry is following the breaking developments just coming in from Fairfax County.
Fairfax County police say DNA evidence have helped them positively identify the bodies of 48-year-old Stephanie Harrison of Redding, California, and 29-year-old Cheyenne Brown of D.C. Both women were mothers. Brown's family still can't believe she's gone.
And I'm so angry. Like, I don't even have tears anymore.
Fairfax police say both women were found in a container near the Moon Inn Motel off Richmond Highway in Fairfax County. The department says a receipt showed Brown was last seen with Anthony Eugene Robinson at that same motel. Robinson lived in New York and more recently in D.C. He's already behind bars, charged with killing 2 other women in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Officers say Robinson reached out to victims on these dating apps before ultimately killing them and transporting their bodies in shopping carts.
Our major crimes detectives are looking for anyone who may have interacted with Robinson on these dating apps or any other dating apps.
And now they suspect Robinson may have had a 5th victim in D.C. D.C. police say they're investigating the death of a woman who was found a block away from Union Station September 7th.
That deceased woman in a shopping cart was covered only with a blanket.
Fairfax says it's working with the FBI, MPD, and 35 other law enforcement agencies to go over other missing persons cases to see if they have any connections to Robinson as well.
We want to know if there's any additional victims or survivors.
And that's why Fairfax County Police ask if you know anything about Anthony Eugene Robinson or have come into contact with him, that you reach them at this number below.
It's sort of fascinating in a way, and thank God they caught him really early on in this case, because as you could see, they caught him for the November 23rd, the recovery of these 2 females. I believe it was Arlene Elizabeth Redmond and Tanita Larice Smith. But they had already in December recovered 2 more bodies, Cheyenne Brown and Stephanie Harrison, the woman that was just on the screen. So sometimes the latest case which was actually discovered the earliest, was her body was discovered in September, September 7th, and her name was Sonia Champ. So they had her as a missing person, not necessarily as a homicide. So as you the and what another thing that makes this more difficult is the police jurisdictions. When it's not one police jurisdiction, you're relying on police agencies speaking to each other, and not necessarily to each other verbally, but through teletype messages and to announcing that, for example, the Fairfax police have recovered 2 DOAs. The DOAs are so and so. And really good police officers, investigators read these teletype messages. And when they have corresponding investigations or alike investigations, they look into that. And that's one of the problems when there's not a national notification system to notify all police. You're relying on the police agencies to notify each other.
I believe there is a database that the feds maintain where you can, if you have an unsolved homicide, you could put it in, and sometimes they'll try to link it. But you're right, obviously, Billy.
Phil, there was a thing called VICAP. It wasn't
Right.
it was not very good, to tell you the truth.
For whatever reason, you're right. VICAP, I couldn't think of it, but it never really seemed to link any cases that were connected. Now, in this particular case, when I first started to see the news media reports on it a few weeks back, the sheriff that was doing the press conference said that the victims died of blunt force trauma and unspeakable things were done to these victims. So that makes me start to think, was there drugs, narcotics involved in this where, it's a dating site. He meets them. They start to, maybe drink, ingest narcotics. And does he spiral out of control and become vicious and homicidal? Based on maybe he gets high, he has flashbacks. Is he a sufferer of PTS? What is the motive behind killing these women? It sounds like, and if you look at the age range, it's not like they're so different. All of the victims seem to be of a different height, weight, look, Caucasian, non-Caucasian, ages, from 54. 40, 29, 48, 39. So it seems like he was just intent on killing, it seems like. And the thing I'm trying to get at is what triggered him to do these vicious acts to these women? What was the trigger? And I'm reading between the lines a little bit, but it seems like there might be other victims that may have survived, dates with this guy. Now, first thing I'd be doing in this case is I'd be going to Plenty of Fish and tagged. I'd be hitting him with subpoenas to see what his account, who he hooked up with. There's obviously records of that. I'd want to interview every person that he had contact with and see, to build a sort of an MO, I guess, on what took place. Did he go out on a date with them one time? Everything was good. Let's meet for a cup of coffee, discuss going out again. And then later on, you wind up in a homicidal rage with this guy. So, that's one of the things I'd be looking at. And again, you'd also possibly be identifying other victims. If there's other people that did survive, they would be helpful to testify in court, to give, background on, maybe things that happened when they were together. So all of these things I'm sure are being looked at. And, I just hope that there isn't any other victims. Obviously 5 is enough. 1 is too many. So let's hope that there's not any other victims. But if there are, let's put it all together. Let's get justice for whoever it is out there that was harmed by this animal. He's an animal.
Phil, I was looking at whenever there's a serial killer type thing, I looked through that book, Practical Homicide Investigation by Vernon Gebeth, who was a retired homicide lieutenant on our job. And one of the things he said, and I was just reading through, he says, most murderers are men. And I mean, that makes so much sense, but that's true. And he also said later on, serial killers almost always has a sexual component to it. So you don't see many women as serial killers. So A, murderers are men, and B, most serial killers, there is a sexual component to this. So is it about power? Is there a clinical way to sort of look at the psyche of a serial killer and tie together the power of a rapist and the how a rapist they do it because they feel the power over their victim. It seems the same traits exist in a serial killer. And let's what we know about this guy, Anthony Eugene Robinson. He's 35 years old. They're baffled because he has really no criminal history. But when you look at people that study serial killers, they say that's not unusual.
It's
That is
not right.
It's not unusual at all. You would expect, oh, he just graduated to these heinous murders. But apparently, serial killers, it's not unusual for them to not have a criminal history. The other thing is that he's transit. He travels all over and he's had multiple different jobs. So they really have their research cut out for them right now. Right now, the Fairfax Police Department, I think, is the lead agency in this. And they've notified 35 different police agencies in regards to this, as well as the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit, because they want to find out, his behavior. And right now he's sitting in the jail awaiting trial on the first two murders. So at some point, maybe because he could be eligible for the death penalty, can that be used to get him to talk, to get him to come clean? I'm sure they interviewed him when they brought him in. I don't know the results of those interviews. Did he immediately lawyer up? Did he talk about what happened? But he does have an attorney right now. So I would think that these 5 murders that they discovered, or they believe they've discovered, is maybe just scratching the surface, especially if he was transient and he was traveling all over the place. He could have victims in other states. And he's working different jobs. And that's why, something we call a victimology is so important, to study the background of the victim, to see how the victim came in contact with this person, but also, even more important, to study the background of the criminal. And through that, it's made in this day and age, it's made easier by computers and great computer systems that can track every time this person moved, every time this person registered a new car, every time this person had a different license, every time this person changed jobs. So most people are an open book, except people that live under the radar. And those people, we get information on them every time they get arrested.
Bill, if you look at some of the most famous serial killers, like a guy like Ted Bundy, he didn't have any criminal history. When they looked into his past, there was some similarities with other serial killers, whether it be a single parent home, sexual abuse as a child, just in general, physical abuse. And then there's different things that these serial killers display, different, harming animals, different things like that. So it's not unusual to not have a criminal background as a serial killer. Again, you pointed out that he was basically traveling through the Northeast corridor. I know that they said he had an address in Brooklyn, New York. I believe it was in East Flatbush. He was tied to Washington, D.C. He's listed as a Washington, D.C. resident. When he was arrested in court, they had him as a Washington, D.C. resident. And then he was obviously at this Moon Inn Hotel in Virginia. Victimology is going to be very important. I think that the sexual component is obviously there, dating site. Something, was there, a date, and then his sexual advances were rebuffed, and then he flies into a rage? Or is it just a straight out, like a Ted Bundy, where he would just fool women? He would put the cast on his arm or on his leg, fake like he had a broken arm, changing a flat, and then when he would get help from a female that he was targeting, he would overpower them and then kill them. So we don't know all the details just yet. I'm sure a lot of these things are going to come out, but the victimology, obviously very, very important. And then the past, the history of the perpetrator, his MO, what was his past like? Again, you want to know, when he did all of these jobs, what was he like? Did he have problems at these jobs? What was his family life growing up? And again, those are things that will be important for future investigations. FBI profiling would definitely want to know about all of that.
Well, someone asked, was he working as a realtor? And I believe they did say he was working as a realtor. I don't know. They said he had numerous jobs. If he was transient, he was probably jumping around and changing jobs as often as he was moving. So did he what? So if he was a realtor, that means he had a license. He'd have to have a state license to sell real estate. So all of those things are trackable. When we talk about major dives into investigation, we call things called mind mapping or data mining, where we can look up everything about a person and the interconnections they have with family, with friends, with places they live, with jobs, cars they owned, homes they own, places they lived, friends they have. All of these things are in databases that we have to look into every single one of these things. And also now he's made himself even more trackable through these two dating sites. And maybe he used other dating sites. How about his social media? If he's using social media, he's definitely savvy with the internet. He knows how to use the internet. I mean, look, Phil, you and I are dinosaurs, compared to these 35 years old. That's right in the thick of learning everything about. My kids make me look like a fool when they use the internet and they say, oh, you don't know how to do this. You don't know how to do that. You don't know how to do. So yeah, I plead guilty, but I wasn't raised with it,
Yeah, I think the younger generation was indoctrinated with computers, cell phones. I myself, just like you said, Billy, I've turned to my youngest daughter many times to figure out things on whether it be a social media or something with the computer. So again, he was a real estate agent, and that's really that's anybody that's a real estate agent or has anything to do with real estate. You search homes on the computer. He's going to list homes. A lot of information would be put into, a real estate agent would be very well versed in the computer. That's probably how he was well versed with the dating sites. I think there's just a lot of work to be done with this guy to figure out, like for instance, were all the bodies dumped? Some of them were found in a commercial industrial area. I think one or two of the bodies was found right near that Moon Inn hotel. So is his MO? Is he have a comfort zone where he wants to be near a hotel where there's a commercial location, that might be deserted on the weekend or at night, that he can take the shopping cart and go dump the bodies? Where does he get the shopping carts from? These are all things they're going to be looking at. And again, were all of the homicides committed in the same manner? Blunt force trauma, let's say to the head. We don't know what part of the body was injured, but were they strangled? Were they stabbed? Was it just a straight out blunt force trauma? Those are the things that are going to be very, very important when we're looking at, let's say, throughout the whole United States or the whole Northeast corridor, other people that are missing and other homicides that are unsolved. So these are the things that they're going to try and put together, all the little pieces of the puzzle. And again, Billy, you mentioned something earlier. I think that's what I was thinking too. Before we even went on the air, I didn't mention it to you, but I'd want to sit down with this guy. It sounds like he lawyered up right away. I don't think he gave much information regarding, what he was responsible for. They linked him through the cameras, the video surveillance cameras and the cell phone. So I would definitely want to sit down with him at some point once he's convicted of the first two murders, because that looks like the way it's going to go. There's going to be the trial for the first two. Let's get him convicted on those. And then once we put these other cases together, if there is stuff that comes to light that we can link to him, now we'll sit down, have a conversation with him as an attorney and say, listen, full cooperation. We can do A, B, or C regarding your future incarceration. He's never going to get out of jail, hopefully. Again, like you said, there could be a death penalty here lurking. Maybe make a deal with him to take the death penalty off the table. Full cooperation. Victims, manner of death, all these different things that would be relative to the investigation.
Folks, on the screen, that's a picture of Anthony Eugene Robinson. That's one of the carts that he used to transport the bodies. One of the things that they're going to be doing, they should be doing, and I'm sure they're going to be doing, is to go national with this in the national news story and to reach out to the public, not just for people that have seen him, but for people that may have encountered him on a dating site, encountered him in public, with friends with him, that had dealings with him as a realtor. All of those things are so important, and that's these are one of the cases. These type of cases are the cases where the police really need to use the public and the public's cooperation. In addition, there's something called linkage, and linkage has to do with these cases. It is linking the cases through modus operandi and through evidence linkage. Like all police departments now, well, at least they've notified 35, should know about his MO. Now, we don't know a lot about we understand that the victims were killed through blunt trauma, but we don't know much more than that. So I think agencies that may have a similar case will actually need to reach out to the Fairfax, Virginia police to find out the exact cause and what he did do during the course of these murders. That may be very important in linking some of these cases together. As we said earlier on, these serial killings are very rare because law enforcement is so good these days, and also because of technology, that it's very tough for someone to become a serial killer. They get caught very early. In fact, in the practical homicide investigation, he gives a definition of what a serial murder is, and it's is two or more separate murders where an individual acting alone or with another commits multiple homicides over a period of time, with time breaks between each murder event. So that sort of defines it, because you may ask, if someone kills two people or three people, are they a serial killer? No, they're not. Based on that definition, there has to be breaks in between the event to make that. Folks, I also want to just say, this is Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. If you're not a subscriber, please go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, give us a thumbs up. We have a Patreon with 3 levels. If you could help us out, going on. We have a Patreon. We also have a YouTube where we have members of our of the Police Off the Cuff Real Crime family, and you can see those folks in the chat. They have the green font, and we appreciate them. For $2.99 a month, you're the bucket. $6.99 a month, your backyard beverage or coffee with Cannon. $9.99 a month, you can polish my rack. $24.99 a month, you're dipped in butter. And the premier, $49.99 a month, is heated dipped in butter. And I thank all of you YouTube members for supporting, especially in 2021, got us going, and now keeping us going in 2022. These cases are just really amazing. And of course, they also reached out to the FBI in the behavioral analysis unit to look into this guy, Anthony Eugene Robinson, young guy, 35, but he's old enough to have been doing this for a long time, and he's old enough to have victims across the country.
Billy, could you put his picture up again? I just want to make a point about,
Sure.
Listen, if you think about serial killers from the most famous cases, now he doesn't look any different than any other person that you might pass on the street. So serial killers don't wear a sign on their back that says, I'm a serial killer. It could be anyone. A lot of times they sort of lead a double life. They may carry on a normal life with a job and a family even, and they go into this other alternate universe where they kill people. And a lot of times if it's for sexual gratification. But the point I'm just trying to make is that this gentleman, Anthony Robinson, 35 years old, doesn't look any different than most other people that you pass in a coffee shop or driving down the road that you see. So again, I think the investigation, they should try to talk to as many people as possible. Like you said, Billy, they should hit it on the national news. I did see it on a local news channel, and I did see it on a national, but it didn't get a lot of attention. That was a couple of weeks ago. Now that a 5th victim has been linked to him, I think they need to hit that again, get his picture plastered all over the place, and maybe some tips will come in. Or even if there is other victims out there that may have survived, they would come forward. That's going to be real important to putting this whole thing together. It's a fascinating thing, serial murderers, but we have to do the best we can to try and prevent stuff like this. And a lot of times these serial murderers or murderers in general will have a history of domestic abuse, physical, sexual. A lot of times they'll act out because of what happened to them when they were children. So again, interaction by Child Protective Services and therapies can prevent possibly a psycho serial killer like this Anthony Robinson.
Let me put up a little bit of the Fairfax, Virginia boss, the investigative boss here. Play a little bit from him.
Major Ed O'Carroll, Bureau Chief of Major Crime, Cyber, and Forensics, Fairfax County, Virginia Police Department. I too extend my heartfelt condolences to the families of these victims. These are horrible tragedies. Cheyenne Brown, Stephanie Harrison were amazing women. They did nothing wrong. Both loved by families and our community. Our detectives have not stopped working since we were first notified of this case on December 7th. Just this week, we received a critical tip, that our person of interest may be linked to another case where a woman was found deceased in a shopping cart in Washington, D.C. My detectives immediately contacted the Metropolitan D.C. Police Department to share this information. That deceased woman in a shopping cart was covered only with a blanket. We believe this may be Anthony Eugene Robinson's fifth victim. This is based on digital evidence that puts him in the same vicinity around the time of the victim's disappearance. Sad and tragic. Meanwhile, my detectives here in Fairfax County have combed through, and the chief mentioned it, through thousands of paper receipts from the Moon Inn. They have found receipts where Robinson stayed on previous occasions. This motel is located in the Alexandria section of Fairfax County on Richmond Highway. We are looking very carefully at each of these days to see if anything happened during his stay. As Robinson now spends his days quietly, probably warm and cozy, locked away in a Rockingham County jail, we are working around the clock. Our detectives have been working to uncover additional digital evidence to find out where Robinson was each and every day over the past year and beyond. We know a lot, but we do need your help about his habits to help uncover additional victims or survivors, and to build a strong, accurate, and detailed case against Robinson.
Now, that's here they are. That's great. They're reaching out to the public. I just wanted to address something. Tim Acosta, why isn't there a database anymore that lists MO of crimes? Are all PDs relying on NCIC? That's the National Crime Information System there now alone. Tim, we mentioned before that there was a program that the FBI used called VICAP.
Right, VICAP.
And as far as I know, they don't keep that up anymore. I don't know if they discontinued it because it wasn't successful, but there absolutely should be some type of MO system where murderers that cross state lines and that travel throughout this country, or how even the DNA database is called CODIS. And that stands for the Combined DNA Identification System. That's a national system. Could serial killers travel? Could they take a plane to France and kill somebody? Absolutely. Is that connected to CODIS? Absolutely not. So maybe there should be an international DNA database, but probably the big thing is who would pay for it. And that would probably be the thing, like, oh, we're not paying for it,
It's always about money, Billy.
It's always about money. Yeah. So I always thought that too, is like, here you have a world that, you could be in Europe in 3 hours, but yet a database like DNA, CODIS, Combined DNA Identification System, is a national, not an international database. And that's why even with DNA, and this gets very scientific, is that some jurisdictions are trying to keep their own database with the theory that most crime is local, isn't it? And Philly, as well as I do, when you want to get someone test someone's DNA against CODIS, it takes a long time. So you have to give them, or to grab someone out of CODIS that is in the database and compare DNA that you have against it, that takes a long time. So an exemplar, if you could take an exemplar from a suspect and have it in a local database, you may be able to get a hit really quickly as compared with CODIS. And I hope I'm not confusing everyone that's listening.
No, you're making a great point, Billy, because it's so vast, and it's like you said, it's a giant database. But the NYPD has the homicide analysis unit. And I remember we would fill out the sheet, and you would put the victimology, obviously the age of the victim, the sex of the victim, the manner in which they died, how the body was found. You'd put specific details in that. I don't think that that's so hard to do on a national level through the FBI. I mean, I don't know how. I did remember Viacap that we used to do that, but now you're saying it's not to maintain.
I remember when I was in homicide, we stopped filling out those forms. They told us to stop doing it. So
yeah, I mean, listen, it's really not that hard to do. If you had a sheet of paper with a few fill in the blanks of information on a general homicide, if you have people and you would put, like in this specific case, you'd put victim found inside of a shopping cart, close proximity to a shopping cart, and you might have the linkage to other cases throughout the country where blunt force trauma, female victim in there, let's say 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever it is, blunt force trauma, shopping cart is the thing, staying at a hotel, whatever it may be. Those are the important, pertinent facts that would be definitely worthwhile putting into a database, and then you wouldn't have to work so hard to put it together to see if there is other victims. And again, if there's a homicide in Virginia and then there's another homicide in Washington and they're linked up right away, it might prevent the further homicides that are going to occur. So obviously, all working together, trying to get things solved quickly as possible can prevent, obviously, a madman like this guy Robinson from committing more heinous homicides.
Marie Green, to answer your question, the perpetrator is 35 years old. And as we said before, which sounds a little baffling, is that he has no criminal history, which was a little bit baffling to the police agency that caught this case. He happens to, we don't know a great deal about him other than that, except that he's transient. He's had an address in New York City, according to Phil, and Washington, D.C. So there needs to be a deep dive going all the way back to his childhood on this guy. It's, he's a serial killer. So we need to have a deep dive. We need to do a deep dive into where he's traveled, where he goes. And, look, he's done us a favor. He's gone on these digital sites. He's got a cell phone. He's not flying below the radar. So we have a lot of things that we can work on. These police agencies, and that's one of the things you hope also is that Real with Robo, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. To answer your question, Phil, California repealed the DP, Maryland abolished it, Virginia abolished it, and DC can't execute anyone.
Yes, but
the death penalty.
Under federal statute, if it's they deem it a federal crime because he's crossing state lines, he could possibly get it under the federal statute. But you know what? Let's see what develops, if there's any more victims and stuff. But there's other ways, even if he's not facing the death penalty. Obviously, Bill, they can maybe, if he has a family in, let's say, New York City, and he wants to be close to home, there's always ways to work with someone of this caliber to try and get them to cooperate. First thing I would do is try to get him convicted of those first two murders. Get him convicted on that. The wheels of justice are already turning on that. And then we'll talk about, the let's make a deal part of it. Obviously not to let him out of jail, but to maybe make his incarceration, closer for family members or something like that. And if he cooperates, things like that could work in his favor. Billy, you brought up the cell phone. If he had the same cell phone for the last year, cell phone technology, with regard to subpoenas and stuff, cell phone companies hold all the cell phone information for 1 year. So they can go back about a year to see where his cell phone was pinging, who he was calling, even what dating sites or what websites he was visiting on his cell phone. So there's a treasure trove of information just on his cell phone. If he has a home computer or a laptop, or if he had access to any computers, again, more information that might be helpful in this investigation. It's really sad to see the pictures of these people that were killed by this maniac. Again, condolences to their families, and hopefully there isn't going to be any other victims than the ones that we know about.
One of the things, and in no way do I imply to a victim blaming at all, but in Gebeth's, and I'm giving him some free plugs, practical homicide investigation, it used to be the Bible of homicide investigation. I don't know if it still is. I'm sure other books have come out, but he listed risk, what he called risk. And for example, to become a victim of a homicide, he listed low, medium, and high risk. And low risk, of course, is person going about their life, traveling to work. They don't abuse drugs. They don't abuse alcohol. They don't stay out late. And so I'm just giving a quick example. Medium, you may take some risks that may put you at risk. And one of the things I'm going to point to right now, and don't get me wrong, because it seems a lot of people use it, are dating sites. Does that put someone out there at risk to meet someone perhaps that haven't been properly vetted? I would think that dating sites, one of the things you should also do besides seeing if someone's compatible is meet them in a public place, at least the first few times, and then of course there's high risk people that are high risk victims of becoming the victim of a homicide. And those are people that partake in dangerous things like prostitution, drug dealing,
Yes.
and criminal activity. And they become what's known as a high risk to become a victim of a homicide. So I'm not victim blaming. This is scientifically proven through statistics. So perhaps in this case, and again, not blaming anyone for going on a dating site. It's very common that people do it these days. I don't know, these two dating sites that we mentioned, what were they
Plenty
called?
of fish and tagged.
Right. Are they high level ones? Are they lower level? I don't know if that even exists, but these are things that potentially could put a person at risk.
Some of the dating sites, there's been a lot of success stories. I think some of them actually do, require a lot of information on the person that is putting themselves out there. So again, obviously, Billy, you made a great point. If you're going to meet someone on a dating site, go to a public place, try to get as much information about that person as possible. One point I wanted to make, I don't think that this Anthony Eugene Robinson, I don't think he started out just killing women after meeting him on a dating site. These are things that happen gradual. He may have graduated from assaulting to killing them. And where did it start? That's one of the things we got to figure out going forward. I'm sure the investigators are doing the same thinking that I'm thinking or that Billy's thinking. They want to know, where did this all start? What led to it? What about his past took place in his life that caused him to be this way? Well, there's going to be, it's almost guaranteed that there's going to be some violence in his childhood, whether it be sexual, physical, child abuse. Something went wrong in this man's life for him to have become a serial killer. I'm sure of it. And again, like you stated, Billy, there's a science to this stuff. This is not, just shooting from the hip. We know from previous, there's been many, many serial killers that from previous investigations. When they look into the background of these psychopaths, that there's always almost like a recipe for the disaster that takes place. Like I said, I mentioned sexual abuse, child abuse, single parent homes, whether it be financial distress, narcotics, alcohol abuse in the home. These are all the characteristics that take place in the study of serial killers in their past, in their childhood.
For sure. Phil, give us a read here.
Sure. Joe Murray, attorney at law. Have you found yourself a jam? Are you in need of legal counsel in the New York area? Do you need a victim's advocate? Well, Joe Murray is your man. He's not only an experienced trial attorney, he's also a retired 15-year member of the NYPD. He literally knows both sides of the fence. His website is jmurray-law.com. His telephone number is 646-838-1702, excuse me, or you could email Joe at jmurray-law.com.
Folks, they're going to have to obviously take a deep dive into Anthony Eugene Robinson. Because he's from New York, potentially, could he have cases in New York? Absolutely. When they talk about geographical profiling, most criminals commit crimes where they live because they're just like us. They're lazy and they don't want to travel far. So when you talk about geographical profiling, there's a good chance that Anthony Eugene Robinson has committed a couple of murders in New York City. Now, I don't want to raise up the NYPD. They're going to be calling me. What do you mean? What do you know? I don't know anything. I'm just saying chances are, statistically, he's been traveling. He's a transient guy, which means he travels around. He's had numerous different jobs. He has an address in New York City. He has an address in Washington, D.C. So far, they've discovered 5 bodies in the Virginia Commonwealth area. Now, potentially, I think right now, New York City detectives are probably going through all the missing person cases they have throughout the city with the assistance of the missing person squad out of the chief of detectives office. And every squad in the city should be going through their female missing person cases, and there's just a great chance that this has occurred. And the greatest thing right now is that they have him locked up. So they don't have to worry about him committing other offenses. He's on ice, as we used to say, and he's not going anywhere. So they can take their time and do a thorough job. They can reach out to the experts, the FBI, the behavioral analysis, and just, take their time letting people know about this guy.
Billy, there's something about this case. You sort of hit on it. And I think it's generally true with most murderers and serial killers, or just people in general that commit crimes. There's a comfort zone. His comfort zone was he was staying at this hotel. They linked him and some of the victims to this hotel. Now, DC, I don't know where he was staying there. That was the location, the hotel in Virginia. But he had a comfort zone. He wanted to do whatever he did and be able to transport the body away to dump it. He went to a commercial area, an industrial area, and dumped the body. So these are the things that you might be looking for if a body was found in that type of a location. Was there a hotel close by? This was the obvious comfort zone for this particular individual. And in serial killers, there's no way to say exactly this is the recipe that caused these things. A lot of times it's a little different, but there is a science to it. They've been studied up and down 7 ways to Sunday in the past. So a lot of the things that we're bringing out are not just, like I said, shooting from the hip. They're based on previous experience, previous investigation, and the science and the study of serial killers. So I think that this 5th case that came about, they're already, publicly stating that they believe he's involved in it because of the cell phone technology. From when she was last seen alive, his cell phone was obviously pinging or close to proximity of where she was. So that's how I think they're tying it to him. I also believe there was a shopping cart in that case as well. She was found in a shopping cart. So the stretch to name him as being involved in that one is not that far at this point. The shopping cart is there, and we have the cell phone technology putting him in the location. So again, when they do the DNA that may have been recovered from her body, it may tie to him. Fingerprint or other evidence. When the crime scene was done, I'm sure they did extensive examination of her body. Now, fingernail scrapings, different things like that. Is there going to be DNA that's going to link back to him? I'm sure they're going to be comparing that now, and a lot of things are probably being done. We mentioned so many of them already, but this is how we could really, put a stop to a future psychopath, by doing the investigation, doing the study, and coming up with the answers to a lot of questions.
Well, you know, Phil, that's why the thorough investigation, when you get a serial killer like this, uh, that's why I think it's important to have the death penalty. And even though it seems like no one gets it anymore, it's a negotiation tool. When you have someone like this, they say, "Look, we can go for the death penalty, or you could tell us everything, uh, all the other cases that we think you may have done." And that type of negotiation tool is taken off the table when certain states don't have it at all. And a guy like this, I mean, I don't want to be redundant, but you got to take a deep dive into this guy because he's been around. He's been in different states. He travels. Uh, he's got a very unique modus operandi, the blunt trauma, the shopping cart. He likes motels. I would imagine, and I'm without going to the Moon Hotel, I would imagine it's not the Waldorf Astoria. You know, I would imagine there's no doorman, there's no guy opening the door of your car as you show up. I would imagine it's probably a sleazy little hotel, and so that's probably part of his MO too. He's not. Well, look, he's. It seems like they haven't really nailed him down into what his profession is. What is his work? What is his work profession? And no one in this world can survive without money. Everything costs money. So even though he's transit, how does he get around? Does he take public transportation? Does he have a car? All of those things. Robert Mahaney, he had Motel 6. I'm sure the Moon Hotel wasn't even as nice as Motel 6,
Yeah. You know what, Billy, too? I'm very, very intrigued by the fact that from September 7th to November 23rd, that's when he was arrested. A little over 2 months, 5 people are killed. It's really raising me up that there's more to this case than we're seeing. There could be rapes, there could be assaults, there could be other things. Hopefully, God forbid, no other murders. But I don't think that he started out in September of this year, and by November he was incarcerated and took out 5 people. I just would think that there had to be a gradual step to get to that point. So, yeah, the deep dive is very, very important in this case. Very important.
Catherine Mooney, his name is Anthony Eugene Robinson. He's a male, 35 years old. The other thing is that we haven't brought up now. There is a possibility, and probably not in these cases, that he has an accomplice. I mean, it doesn't fit the MO in this case, but sometimes you get surprised. I mean, the case I think that baffled everyone, and I would love to actually take a deep dive into that because I read the book about it, was the Beltway sniper case. The FBI behavioral analysis unit predicted that the shooter was a male white, 35 years old. It was so far off as to be ridiculous. The shooter turned out to be a male black 17 with another male black who was like a father figure to him who was about 35, 40 years old. So the behavioral analysis and predicting who was doing those cases was just way off. It was way off base. And I don't know. I don't know the science behind that. I remember I took the criminal investigation course in NYPD, and I later taught at the criminal investigation course. And there was a guy named Ray Pierce,
Oh, yeah.
who was an NYPD detective who went to the FBI behavioral analysis school. And he was big with, profiling. That was what they called it, profiling. And then that word became a dirty word because it was like profiling someone by race or whatever. But profiling was really to profile someone according to many things: modus operandi, height, weight, criminal history, signature. All of those things were thrown into, trying to find out who this person profiling. Let's profile this person. Who is the Beltway sniper? Who is he? What does he look like? Where did he go to school? Is he of average intelligence? Is he low intelligence? But I don't buy it. I don't necessarily buy it because I haven't seen it really in my career. I've never seen it really work.
You know, it's one of those things. It's like a sketch artist. Sometimes the sketch is dead on, and sometimes it's not even close. So I guess, listen, there's success stories maybe with regard to profiling. I haven't heard too many of them myself, but yeah. But Ray Pierce, he was a good guy, and he was actually the profiler for the NYPD. He
Yes, but
always,
what Phil? What use is it really when you think of it? Like, how accurate could it possibly be? It's almost like a medium. Remember, we've had a couple of
yeah,
mediums on our show, right?
yeah.
And every time we have on a medium, I'm entertained as hell, but I don't believe a word they say. And
I think that, listen, for me, where the evidence is taking me, where the case is taking me, and a lot of times, for me, it was always just like when I started to do investigation, it was kind of like common sense. I mean, not really common sense. It's the steps that we would follow. If the case starts to point in a direction, like with this particular case, they pulled the videotape probably of the hotel, which was close by to this commercial industrial area, and they must have saw, or somewhere close to where the body was found, they saw the guy pushing the cart, and it just went from there. So I think a lot of times, could it be helpful? I mean, if you're at a complete and total zero, you don't have anything on a case. I mean, so they give you a profile of who to look for. I mean, that's still not that much information, unless they give you the guy's name and address, the actual perpetrator, which is obviously impossible. I mean, it maybe it is somewhere helpful, but to me, good old fashioned police work, legwork, study of video cameras, cell phone technology today, all the things that we have today. That's the way to solve these cases.
100%. Fuzzy Doxy, you hit this on the head. My friend was abducted at Walmart, forced into her car. The next day she was found dead. She was getting a birthday gift for her son. Never get in the car. You're 100%
Horrible.
right. Someone pulls a gun on you and says, get in the car. Don't do it. Run. Take your
Right.
shot right there.
Yeah, you
They're
got
going
to
to probably, if they shoot at you, they're kind of probably miss, and they probably won't shoot because they want to get away. Don't ever get into the car with a criminal that tries to force you in the car. Good point. That's a very good point. And, I've said it myself, and my actual master's degree is in security management. And I always thought that too. It's like someone comes on the street, pulls a gun, and says, "Get in the car." I'd be like, "Yeah, right." Boom. That's when you turn on the 4.4 speed in the 40.
Well, one of the other things is during a holdup, if you give over the money, and now they say, "All right, come in the back room. We're going to tie you." That's also a no-no. You're placing yourself at grave risk. I mean, I'm not going to tell anybody to fight and get killed, but if things don't look or smell, if the hair on the back of your neck starts to stand up, it usually happens for a reason. Yeah, you got to take a shot at that point. And Bill, from personal experience about that.
Yeah,
So,
that happened to me, man. I was getting robbed, and the guy robbing us was going to tie us up. And I said to myself, this robbery is
happening.
over.
Yep.
I am not getting tied up.
Yeah.
Once you get tied up, everything that happens is bad,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I took my shot, and it worked out. He's in prison for life, and I'm alive here.
Thank
You know,
God. Thank
I was
God.
alive to drink for a month straight to get over it. but I did. No, it's crazy. Michelina Sereno, Bill Cannon, some serial killers are doing it out of anger and has complex trauma, angry towards someone from their past who either abused them or knew about it and didn't help them, etc. It's crazy. Michelina, we can't really look into, we can look at serial killers and these type of people. Why does someone do crime? They look into the sociological and the psychological, but there's people born very poor and in bad circumstances, and for some reason they rise above all that and become super successful people. I've seen it. I taught in a college with all Black and Hispanic kids for 10 and a half years, and some of those kids did great. Most of them did okay. And one of the things I used to ask them, and I was baffled by this, because I said to them, I go, you think a white kid that's rich has a better chance of making it than you? And they all said to me, no, I don't think so. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool that you think that way, because look, we all get jealous. Sometimes you see someone that has an easier life than you, for example, right? Oh, look at that guy, man. He doesn't even have to work. His dad paid his college. Sounds like my kids. They don't have to do this. They don't have to do that. But it doesn't help you to be jealous, I guess.
I think the point you're probably hitting there is that these kids are educated that probably said that once you're educated and you understand the way things work, I think, it's kind of common sense to think that, and listen, in this day and age, in the last 25, 30 years, the playing field has really been leveled, more than that even, so I think that, listen, I really hope and pray that society would always, reward merit. In other words, the right person for the job. If you have the highest score, it doesn't go by what your race is. Let's go with the person that has the highest score for the job, and the technology end of it, and whatever it is. You can't have somebody that did an 80 on a test and the person who did 100 isn't getting the job because the person that did an 80 is a minority. I don't agree with that. That's my own personal opinion. Let's have a world that's fair and based on how good you are at what you're going to do. That's really not that simple.
I think that we all at some point in our life get someone that helps us tremendously, and hopefully everyone gets that at some point when maybe you're down. Someone gives you that kick in the ass, or someone gives you that encouragement. Someone gives you that reason to push on, and that you don't give in to despair. It seems like that many people do. Guys, this Tuesday night at 9 p.m., we have Gil Carrillo and talk about serial killers.
Yeah.
He was the case detective of the Night Stalker case back in 1985, 86. And he's going to come on the show on Tuesday at 9 p.m. I'm so thrilled to get him as a guest. I've been trying to get him for like a year, and he was ignoring me for a while. Finally, I got through to him. He's coming on the show, and we can't really, I don't know how we're going to, it's a little tricky. He can't do a deep dive into the Night Stalker case, but he said he could talk about it. He's still under contract. They're doing TV shows, TV series about this. I don't know if you saw last year, they did the Netflix series on it. It was amazing. It's the Richard Ramirez case. If you read that case, it's so heartbreaking. It's so sad. And Gil Carrillo is just an amazing, amazing guy. And Phil and I are so looking forward to interviewing him on Tuesday that, we're so excited. I also got a commitment from Heather McDonald. She's the conservative writer who has a book out called The War on Police and several other books. So she's a great supporter of the NYPD, a great supporter of police to begin with. I also have I don't have a date yet, but Ashley Banfield, she's a reporter for News Nation. She formerly was on CNN. We got her number. We're going to try to get her on the show. And we're working on some other guests. We're trying to bring the very best guests we can to you guys. But Phil and I actually threw this episode together today, and we thought it's an important case, and it could still blow up into a hugely bigger case than it already is right now. Phil, final words?
Final words again. Our condolences to the families of these 5 women that lost their lives to this savage animal. Let's hope that the investigation gets a lot of questions answered, that they wrap it up nice and tightly. Let's hope there's no other victims. And let's pray for those families. And I'm looking forward again, like you said, Billy, Tuesday night. I think that's going to be a great show.
Amazing. Guys, have a happy Sunday. I hope you're having a nice dinner with your family. Have a glass of wine for me. I haven't had a glass of wine. This is my 9th day. I'm trying to chill out for a little bit, lose a little weight. And I'm dying to have a glass of red wine, but I'm gonna keep up on my fast from red wine. Anyway, guys, have a great Sunday. Be safe out there. God bless.
Stay safe, everyone.
One episode just ain't enough.